Oh, I'm just so cool with my positronic yaw adjuster. Yes, and I have my extended procedural multiprocessor. And what about you, Elite? What are you plebs talking about? With a little outside inspiration, I figured it'd be interesting to list the 10 things that make us all say, yes, Elite Dangerous is better. But as an added challenge, I set out to also not mention any other game. Be that, well, the one you're thinking of right now, you know the one, or maybe even one that is nowhere near close. Regardless, this will show how good the game is by its own accord, rather than a comparison, or at least as much as it's possible. Okay, well, let's then start with the tool that you can see right now. The thing that gives Elite players this amazing ability not to just experience the game, but also share it with others in a pleasant, not too complicated way. The camera suite. Thing is, I've filmed a lot of game... almost made a comparison there. Okay, to rephrase that, Elite's camera suite indeed is quite intricate. And while it's true that it lacks the cinema level features, the power of Elite's camera suite has allowed anyone to use specifically designed feature to capture amazing moments, not only from the gameplay angle but outside of it as well, third person, or even not even focusing on any subject. Even though Elite players really like to shove their ships in front of things. And I'm not different! Still, developers recognize not only how useful this tool is for video makers like myself, but also for an average Joe, and frankly, it's unrivaled for me. Well, okay, except for one, but I promise not to make any mentions of other games. Okay, it's Witcher 3, happy? Now move on. So back in the day in my top 10 best things about Elite Dangerous, I did mention this and, well, to this day it's still true. The default key mapping for keyboard and mouse are really good. Now, sure, depending on the background we all come from, it will be a personal taste thing, but still, I started playing Elite long ago and was surprised how easy it was to get into playing it, how intuitive the default key maps were. Of course, as the time passes on, more features get added, and those tend to get shuffled around on keys, like the whole camera suite. That one's a mess, and the exploration tool too kinda needs a remapping. So I guess what I'm saying is, to get started in Elite, to do the basic things, keys are mapped out quite well. The rest might need some alteration. Okay, next. Speaking of the things that I have talked about in some old top 10 videos, and that still holds true, is UI. Well, with an asterisk, but I'll leave that as a last. So, before playing Elite, you see, UI elements in games were constantly moving with your camera, with some tricks from time to time like head bobbing and so on. But whenever you see a UI element in a game, as an object in a game world, it would be weird, fuzzy, or consume a lot of frames when it's active. Trust me, I know, I've coded and played around with this stuff as a matter of fact. Yet the fact that Elite manages to have not only crisp looking UI, but one that is actually a game object and not an HUD projection surprised me, cause even in... I should not mention other games. Okay, in the space where the dead things lurk, UI is still a bit fuzzy, yet Elite developers found a way to make it clear and functioning. Oh, and the functionality of the UI too is impressive, as everything is so snappy and precise. This truly was that one thing that appealed to me from a stylistic and technical way, both as a programmer, designer, wannabe artist and more. As for the asterisk, well, these days UI is snappy and still works, that's true, but it basically is on razor's edge due to technical debts, and causes massive issues on patch days oftentimes. The design too in many places is outdated, like in outfitting, where the normal hull reinforcements and meta hull reinforcements are separate, while the guardian hull reinforcements and normal hull reinforcements are together. Then experimental weapons tab too is a mess. Okay, so UI does need a complete remake, but not because it doesn't work, it's just old. Next up then, again from the way back when. You see, before I played Elite, while trying out different styles and things, I never really played a game like this. The thing that drew me in at first were some videos of people just selecting things in their UI boxes and going in some detail that frankly I never had seen in any game. Not even in FPS games that usually have the highest level of intricacy, yet here you could take your space minivan, look up information on engines, turn them off and repair under some sub-menu. The level of intricate detail was indeed something I had not seen before, nor since. Elite truly gives you the level of immersion. Okay, fine, true simulators don't really count as games, so I can mention them, but that's the thing, it bordered on that level of one-to-one recreation of a real plane or a chopper, for me. After that, it's interesting to know that when we think of space travel and whatnot else, stuff that would be set in sci-fi setting, all of us would think of something fantastical, if you will. Yet it's rare to see someone trying to ground the fantasy, to think of things that would be plausible. Yet Elite, in this sense, has done something that I frankly have not seen before. Make a game with a rather grounded and realistic visuals.
Wait, you call this realistic? What space glue have you been sniffing?
I mean, model-wise, you don't have everything lit up by alien tech and whatnot else. You have ships with the goddamn duct tape stuck to a wall. Or wires sticking out on a multi-million credit ship. Or even your starter ship having a first aid kit and fire extinguisher next to your pilot's seat. Little details and design that make you think, yeah, this looks actually quite plausible. Elite holds back on the fantastical and embraces a bit more realism, which frankly is both refreshing and, yeah, kinda dull at times too, but what can you do?
Oh yeah, spoiler in a spaceship. That sure is realistic.
Oh, look, an alien! And you know that realism carries on to my next point. The game is set in the recreation of the Milky Way, our galaxy. And yes, I'm not kidding. Elite Sandbox, the place you can explore, is the whole galaxy that makes up billions, trillions of stars, and even more celestial bodies in each system, as there's not just one body in a system, after all. As a matter of fact, since the release of Elite Dangerous, people have been running around discovering planets and systems and whatnot else, but even to this day, not even a % of it has been discovered. It truly is impressive. Like right now, every dot on your screen is an actual system. It is insane. No game I know has this. There are also regions, the whole sectors in this galaxy that cannot be accessed since day one, but developers have not disclosed anything about them, so you start to wonder what was the point in placing these places. But whatever, I guess. Still, the recreated galaxy is yours to explore in Elite. Oh, and as a side fun fact, to get to the other side of the galaxy from Sol takes around 20 hours if you're speedrunning. And yeah, I've actually been there. It took me, with some stops, over 60 hours to get. Yet what would possess one to go there is beyond me, as I can tell ya, it's dark, barren, and there's just a few brown planets, that's it. Like seriously, there's nothing special on the other side. But speaking of the massive scale that Elite possesses, ever wondered how a modern game can have a huge sandbox like this? The game files should take up several petabytes or more. Well, in the actuality, the game takes up around 38 gigabytes on our hard drives. But the game is persistent, right? Where's all the data stored? Or is it generated or something? I mean, I can return to the same system, the same planet and same coordinates, and it'll be the same, right? Okay, well, it's true that you can generate planets, maps, and whatnot else with seed keys and strings. You know what I mean. But still, the programming aspect of Elite, the technical side of it, is very impressive, and frankly, there is a fair few developer streams that go in detail on exactly how this happens, and how they create the galaxy, if you're interested. But the point here is, Elite certainly has a very interesting and indeed clever programming behind it, and while it has been seen in many places, it certainly hasn't been applied to quite the scale like this, and I at least find it very interesting at times.
Man, okay, well it has some tech, but I bet the game is a sideshow. Meh.
Frankly, no. These days you can run Elite on some rather old gear. And now I'm trying to tell myself that my first PC with the first generation i7-930 and Radeon HD 6970 is not that old, but it is. Still, with that thing I can manage just fine on low graphics, with about 50 frame minimum on planets and notably more in space. Frankly, surprisingly, with all this coding and generated content, the game still runs quite well. So performance here is a big thing. Well, when it's not being sabotaged, of course. Oh, but speaking of performance, well, it's an interesting thing that Elite is also one of the games that many people will mention as the go-to VR game. Or at least the VR supported game. Indeed, the privileged goggle enthusiasts are quite frequent for this title, and thanks to a rather good HOTAS support, can be made into an impressive, immersive experience.
VR roller coasters? That's for losers and grannies who think that technology is witchcraft. Real men of the PC Master Race outfit and nerd chairs with all the gear, pick up the fastest ships, then proceed to projectile vomit on themselves after the first round of the race maneuvers around the space station.
But seriously, if you're looking for an immersive VR game with a lot of detail, Elite certainly is, if not the best one, then at least one off. Especially if you have HOTAS 2. And even I have to admit that. And I fly with a keyboard and mouse on a flat screen. And yet my last point, the best thing about Elite is sound. Now, if you watch the top 10 I made, this is no surprise and I'll be echoing my opinions there, but Elite possesses one of the best sound designs in the industry. The creaks and cracks, bumps and rustles as your ship moves about, even sounds that really should not exist in space, and developers claim that your ship is generating by its systems, so let's call it a space magic sound design, still gives you a very real feel of your surroundings. On top of the little detailing, the big overarching thing, the music too is noteworthy. Though I have said that Elite knows only one tone, and that's the super serious time for serious players, still, being able to nail that one thing and use it to your advantage to set the overarching tone for the game and its universe is not an easy feat. One wrong soundtrack, one missed effect and it loses the punch, but Elite never does that. Even with the sounds that you hear constantly, you don't get bored of them. So there you go, the 10 things that I think prove that Elite is better. Obviously, a few of these things are my personal picks and wouldn't apply to everyone, but when does it ever? The point was to try and see what is. Regardless, let me know what you think and maybe you too have a list to share down below. So feel free to apply the same rules I did, that is, not mentioning other games, or if you like, go full ham and see how many comparisons you can make. Regardless, do share the video if you liked it and all that stuff, do subscribe and hey, maybe check out the Patreon and merch store, it all helps. Or perhaps Streamlabs if tipping is your thing. Still, for now, I'm gonna go and listen to some admittedly British, but still great voice work of Elite Dangerous audio logs. Those two are worth checking out, by the way.